Now, we shouldn't bore our with graphs necessarily much.
Okay.
This was more to give a little bit of a perspective. Uh, let's start with something fun. Oh yeah, let's start with the Göbekli Tepe folder.
Sure. We did talk a bit about this in which stream was that? A couple of weeks ago.
I don't
I forget.
remember. I think it was like
I don't
four
know. We
weeks.
talked about it recently.
Yeah, we
I think that was the Harari stream, actually. Went
Harari
off on a bit
stream,
of an
yes, that's
aside
it.
to explain the Gobekli Tepe phenomena that he mentions but doesn't explain.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. I went on a tangent there. Yeah, this one is kind of an interesting. Let's use this as the ingress vector for Europe. So this is an interesting little site that exists in Anatolia, modern day Turkey, on a hill not that far from the sea. Göbekli Tepe means pot-bellied hill in Turkic, so that's why it's called like that. And this is a large, you can just cycle through the images slowly. So this is a large megalithic site that shows up in the archaeological record just as the Ice Age ends, or starts ending at least, once the things have settled down from the events that caused the end of the Ice Age. And this is the point where agriculture and stone construction starts with a bang. Essentially, it doesn't exist one day at all in Anatolia, and the next day it's just there, and you see radiating out from this site across Anatolia into Lebanon and into what is today Greece. You see the idea of agriculture and various grains starting to show up very rapidly in the archaeological record. So the current working thesis, this one sits at the headwaters of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers also. So it's in these hills that those rivers start. So I was thinking about another place there before. In any case, so this is the inception of agriculture for essentially Europe. And what's
by
interesting,
saying that, you mean this is sort of the furthest back we can, find any records of agriculture.
yeah, in this part of the world, it doesn't
Okay,
exist before this, and it pops up like that. So
right.
normally we will see like in other places that you would find remnants of trial and error. You just don't cultivate wild grains that you collected as a gather, and then suddenly had large fruit-bodied grains from nowhere. So the emerging theory for Göbekli Tepe is that it is a site of technological transfer, because this might seem like a temple or like a settlement, but there is no, in the sedimentary layers, there is no habitation in this area at all. There's no nearby water sources. The next river is like down in the valleys below, so it's very far. It's quite arid. So there has never been any permanent settlement here. So then you must ask yourselves, why did people that ostensibly were hunter-gatherers overnight learn how to create megalithic structures? And the first thing that they did create was not a village, not a city, not a fortification or anything. They created something that looks a little bit like a temple.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing they do.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old, the first thing the Romans built was a bathhouse. Isn't that the the saying when they took over a new village or a city to sort of get started on the Roman culture.
So if you just scroll down the closer images there on the various pillars, because it's an interesting thing. This site is vast. The dugout section that we showed previously is just a very small piece of it. It radiates out for hundreds and hundreds of meters with various concentric circles. The interesting thing, though, is that when you come to the stonework, this is from the innermost circle, the oldest part. This thing holds much higher standards, say with these bas relief lizards or whatever it is. And it gets distinctly more primitive as it gets newer. Normally it's the other way, that the oldest is the worst, and it gets better as people can get their skill going. But in this case, it's clear that the people who did this were very experienced, had the tools to do it, and came from a culture that had put value in this, so that they didn't have to farm. They could be masons and sculptors.
They had
but
time to put into
generations
their
had
skills.
less and less of that training. So therefore, the stonework gets smaller, more primitivistic, more just worse. Essentially.
Yeah, it degrades over time, basically.
Yeah, until the last circle that they have looked on is also the smallest. Doesn't have the T shape of the pillars. It's just straight pillars, and they are uneven and raw, and not very good at all. So what? So the you also that one, that's pillar 43. This one is a little bit interesting because you have these bag-like symbols on the top. You can see those like 3 bags. Yeah. Those symbols show up in a number of places in the world. They show up in Sumeria. They show up on Olmec stoneworks in Mesoamerica, and they all date from roughly this period. So,
Mjolnir here says, "I'm not saying it's Hyperboreans, but it's Hyperboreans."
Yes, or a shared cultural influx or something like that. Everyone,
The question is that this looks like
the Americans
someone
will recognize the McDonald's symbol and so on.
Right. But the point is that this whole thing looks very much like someone from the outside came in and took over, and they had much higher skill, much better tools.
Yeah, probably just trying to pass on what they could.
Yeah.
If you come from an agrarian society that was able to a megalithic culture, let's just not go into the full alien man and say that it was super advanced. No, but they had astronomy and could do all of this cool stuff.
I mean, you can do quite a lot. I mean, throwing back to our old Scandinavian history when we talked about the Bronze Age, I mean, you can do quite a lot in terms of civilization with what we'd today consider low levels of technological advancement, right? But there are a couple of big ones, and once you have those going, you sort of supercharge your your society. So if this was a farming society sort of coming into contact with a non-farming society, I mean, obviously the farming society, if it had been going for quite a while, would probably be miles ahead of them.
Yeah, and this is also, you can see the ideas transfer, and also how in the degradation of the archaeological record of the stonework, how certain skills are simply not prioritized because everyone else is just trying to survive and get through the day. So this kind of more esoteric, from their perspective, perhaps more esoteric stuff, they just don't have time for it.
No, it's not a priority, understandably.
Yeah, and you also have to remember that the time that this is put up in the tail end of the younger Dryas era, the end of the former Ice Age, things are still quite chaotic, planetary wise. So it's not like these people come from like a place that was bad and then they get into a nice place, because there's some hard shit going on. With the climate, it's swinging violently back and forth from essentially atomic winter to hot periods with droughts and stuff like that. So this is also a period where you have what you call a genetic bottleneck in the human genome, because you can see in the trace lines of the mitochondrial DNA that you can see the traces of that it has been a much larger and more diverse population, and then it just contracts, and you see missing data in it too, and that's when you have a population crash, and you see a big one coming in just at the tail end of the Ice Age.
Right.
And I mean, if we can go back to the graphs there just to take a little look here.